Let's dive further in the LSU conversation. I did an exercise on LouisianaSports.net. Did this same thing last year with 5 games left. But LSU's got 6 league games to go. You've got a win against Florida. You lost at Ole Miss. You got 3 home games, 3 road games. Outside of the game against Western Kentucky, I think LSU will be able to handle themselves against the Hilltoppers. So I ranked them from the most difficult of those to the most winnable of those. And I want to kind of dive into that and give my reasons why I think that, and it gives you kind of an outlook on what this season's going to look like. Because now we got a month of data on all these teams and kind of what they are and what they aren't. And then we understand like what LSU's best and worst matchup is now. We know that a team like Clemson, a team like Florida, that's an advantageous matchup for LSU because those offenses are really going to struggle to score against LSU. LSU's offense doesn't have to do as much to win. We know that a team like Ole Miss with a good offense and a lesser defense, that's not a great matchup for LSU because LSU's offense is not built to take advantage of the poor defense, and the other team's offense can score enough to outpace LSU. So you start with Alabama. I think is the toughest game on the schedule. It's in Tuscaloosa. And I think this Alabama team has really found something with Ty Simpson over the last 3 weeks. He threw for 276 yards and 2 touchdowns against Georgia. And also, most of Georgia's success against the Alabama defense was on the ground. Florida State against Alabama's defense ran for 230 yards, and Castellanos did a lot of that, and we know that Nussmeier can't do it. LSU can't attempt to replicate what Georgia and Florida State did to have some success against Alabama because LSU can't run the ball. So to me, this is clearly the most difficult game on LSU's schedule. You think about the venue, think about the other team, the strengths and the weaknesses. I think that's a bad matchup for LSU in Tuscaloosa. Number 5 on this list, second toughest game, I still think is at Oklahoma. Brent Venables' defense is very, very good. They're second in the SEC in total defense, just 207 yards per game, second in the league in sacks, and they are the best third down defense in the nation by a pretty wide margin. When I look at this LSU offense and I look at that Oklahoma defense on the road, like that doesn't sound good to me. And on the other side, John Mateer, before he got hurt, second in the country in total offense, 351 yards per game. You figure Oklahoma will move it a little bit, and against a dominant defense that Oklahoma is playing at this point, just doesn't feel like LSU's offense matches up great in that one. So I think it's the second most difficult game for LSU. I think the third most difficult game for LSU is actually at home, and that's Texas A&M. Aggies 4-0 for the first time since 2018, and I think they've won in 2 different ways. A&M went to South Bend and won a shootout. Marcel Reed threw for 360 yards, and they topped 40 points in that game on the road. Then they came back home to Kyle Field, and they held Auburn to 177 yards and only 10 points. So that's I think to me that shows a team that can win in 2 different ways. While it's a little bit inconsistent, the offense wasn't very good against Auburn, the defense wasn't very good against Notre Dame. They've shown they can do both. They've got both pitches in the arsenal. So I would think this was a terrible matchup for LSU in College Station. Bring that game into Tiger Stadium with LSU's defense. I still feel pretty good about the way that LSU can handle itself in that game, but I do think it is the third most difficult game that LSU's got on the schedule thus far. Then you got the other road game that I've got as the fourth most difficult game, and that's Vanderbilt. Now, this one is interesting. Vanderbilt's 5-0. They beat Virginia Tech. They beat South Carolina. Both those games were on the road in Blacksburg and in Columbia. But their next 4 games are Alabama, LSU, Missouri, and Texas. The Bama and Texas games are on the road. Diego Pavia, second in the SEC. Well, the Vanderbilt offense is second in the SEC in scoring. They're scoring 49 points per game. And so that would suggest that LSU might have a hard time holding Vanderbilt to 14, 17 points. They could, but Pavia and that Vanderbilt team are humming at a pretty efficient clip right now. We'll see what they do against Alabama. That's probably a better indicator of what they do against LSU as opposed to what they did against Utah State. But they're scoring, and their quarterback's veteran, and he wants to make some plays. And, I feel like they're probably going to score 20 points on LSU, 24 points on LSU. Now you've got to come up with that on the other side, which I think LSU can do. But I just feel like beating Vanderbilt 20-10, 20-17 is going to be a hard thing to do the way that they're playing offense. So I've got that as the number 4 easiest easiest game. Now I've got the two home games that I think are the easiest for LSU, the most winnable. Second on that list is South Carolina. That's next up on the schedule. South Carolina got drilled by Vanderbilt 31-7 in a game that Lenora Sellers left with a concussion. And then Missouri beat South Carolina 29-20 a week later. South Carolina got right a little bit. They beat Kentucky 35-13, but you're still talking about a South Carolina team right now that ranks last in the SEC in total offense. They're only better than Florida in scoring offense. So they're one of the worst offenses in the SEC right now. That plays into LSU's hands. That's going to be a talking point you hear me mention a lot next week when we're getting ready for the South Carolina game. They're not playing well on offense. When you pair that with LSU's defense, the way that defense is playing, that becomes a very favorable matchup for LSU with South Carolina. So I like that one in Tiger Stadium next week at night for LSU. And then I think the most winnable game on LSU's schedule moving forward is actually Arkansas. I could see it being flipped, but I'm going to give South Carolina a little bit of a pass on the Sellers game against Vanderbilt where he got hurt. I look at Arkansas. That's a team that just fired its coach. That's a team with a woeful defense and a decent offense. Now, the offense wasn't good against Notre Dame, and the offense turned the ball over against Memphis and Ole Miss. There's a talent discrepancy between LSU and Arkansas that's significant. That game is at home. I could listen to you tell me to flip South Carolina and Arkansas. I still probably trust South Carolina more than Arkansas, and Arkansas is a different team now that they've ditched their entire defensive staff and Bobby Petrino is calling the shots. But listen to these numbers. Arkansas is 118th in the country in total defense, 113th in scoring defense, and those numbers become even more jarring, 118th and 113th, when you realize in the first 2 weeks of the season, they allowed 7 points to Alabama A&M and 14 to Arkansas State. So you had held those two teams to 21 total points in 2 weeks, and then against Ole Miss, Memphis, and Notre Dame, you allowed 1,605 yards and 129 points in 3 weeks. That's why you fired your coach. And Taylor Green still leads the nation in total offense, so that's a bit of an issue for LSU because he should be able to provide something on the offensive side. But I just think Arkansas is so bad on defense and that their program is going to be in such bad shape by the time they get here, having lost a bunch of games in a row and their coach being fired and folks looking at the transfer portal and looking at potential red shirts if you hadn't played 4 games. I just feel like Arkansas is going to show up in Baton Rouge in a bad way. So I've got that as the easiest game left on LSU schedule in league play. Put those in order again. Arkansas easiest, then South Carolina, road trip to Vanderbilt 3rd, Texas A&M at home 4th, at Oklahoma 5th, and then at Alabama, the most difficult game remaining on LSU's schedule. That's the way I see it at this point in any event. So you can read more about why. I've got some more statistics, a little bit more data there at LouisianaSports.net. You can always, as always, read that for free. Hey, thanks for watching Hunt on LSU. Before you get out of here, do us a couple of favors. Hit that like button, leave your comments below, and subscribe to the channel for all your Fighting Tiger football talk. See you next time.